Hello, I'm Deborah Wright of Ascribe Consulting. I'm here to talk to you about ethics. My talk today is about 5 ethical considerations for grant writers. Grant writing is a profession, and we're held to a high ethical standard of reporting from a nonprofit to the funder, and also vice versa, from the funder to the nonprofit. So let's get started. Let me go over the 5 parts that I have for you today. The first one is for a grant writer to write a unique narrative for each grant proposal. It can be tempting to take an old narrative and just plop it into a new proposal, but that doesn't work. The funder has put out specific guidelines and is expecting the nonprofit with the grant writer to answer the questions, the prompts that the funder has stated. And if we use old information, it doesn't answer the questions the funder is asking of the nonprofit. The funder will dismiss your application just like that. They won't go any further because you didn't answer their questions that they wanted answered before funding is provided. Number 2, using current demographic information. Demographic information tells the funder who you're serving. What is about them that needs help? What's missing from your population you're serving? So the funder knows what they can do to help out and assist you in lifting up the clientele that you're serving. So it's very important to use current information, because if you're using past and old information, it may not state what your needs are in an accurate manner. It's very important. It's also just finding correct information, which is an ethical consideration for a grant writer. Number 3, not to overstate a nonprofit's capabilities. State correctly and accurately what a nonprofit can do, has done, and for instance, what their staffing is, volunteers, funding that they have to provide to assist in their own efforts. There are other areas to look at, such as the budget, which is a big one. Funders look at the budget, especially the dollar amounts that the nonprofit is stating, this is what we have and this is what we've done with the funds that we have currently. So not to overstate the nonprofit's capabilities anyway. Being very factual, no matter what the facts are, will help your case as you move forward in the grant proposal process. Number 4, a grant writer's fees do not belong in the budget. Not at all. A grant writer is looking to the nonprofit to pay their fees out the funds that they have. This is part of a nonprofit to be grant ready to be able to hire a grant writer, ready to be able to supply the information that the grant writer needs to accurately, quickly put their information in front of the funder to be considered for funding. So it is not an ethical thing for a nonprofit to put a grant writer's fees in a budget. It's not. And a grant writer should be aware of this as they negotiate their service fees with the nonprofit agency. The last one is grant writers do not work on a contingency basis. This is very similar to number 4. A grant writer is paid for their services, but they're not paid. Wait until a grant is funded, and that's what contingency is. The nonprofit will only pay once the grant is funded, which is not an ethical thing for a grant writer to accept. These 5 areas is for a grant writer to be considered a professional. It's also for a grant writer to be aware of what is proper, what is correct, and what isn't. And for a grant writer to stand up for themselves and say, no, I'm not able to do contingency work, for instance. I'm not able to have my fee put in a budget. It's up to the grant writer to politely and respectfully tell the nonprofit this is what we're supposed to do as grant writers. I hope I brought up something interesting for you. I hope I brought up something that you may or may not have thought of. But ethics is a very important consideration as a grant writer, and I just want to bring that up to you today. Thank you for being here with me, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.